Hello and welcome to Stronger Than My Excuses show about confidence and balance in a digital world. I'm Dave Abrahams, digital editor at Central Coast Newspapers, and I'll be your host for the panel discussion today. We're coming to you as an online panel today, thanks to COVID, of course. However, we'd like to thank our digital marketing and website company, Advantage Agency in Long Jetty, for offering us their office space, filming, and for generally supporting the show. We look forward to you paying a visit in the real world soon. Hey, first, as is tradition, I'd like to pay respect to the darkened young people of the land of which we are on today and producing today. And we acknowledge their discussions, both that have happened in the past, now in the present, and in the future. It's wonderful to know that conversations such as this have been happening for thousands of years. It really gives me a buzz to think that we might pull a bit of that energy in today's discussion. Stronger Than My Excuses will be producing a number of episodes on various topics on both business and community issues. To keep an eye out, so keep an eye out for those. Today, though, we're discussing ways to be more confident and balanced in this fast-moving digital world. With me today as my co-host is Marc Charette of WorkPics 360. Who create virtual tours. Marc is a Google Street View trusted photographer and a digital media business content creator. Welcome, Marc.
Thanks for having me. And it's a great panel we're going to have today. Dave, we're going to have some great discussion having to do more with the challenge that, what happens when we have balance issues that the digital world presents to us. And that can create some real issues with the confidence that we're doing the right thing. So today on our panel, we've got Jackie Svedas, who is a community and stakeholder engagement manager at the NBN. Hi,
Good morning.
And secondly, our second panelist today is Sam Petrusma, who is a marketing and design and web agency here on the Central Coast from Advantage Agency.
Hi. Thanks, Marc.
Thanks for being here, Sam.
Just before we ask the first question, I'd like to acknowledge and thank our sponsors, who you'll see on screen, and particularly the people around the major and other sponsors that produce this show. These sort of things don't happen without you. So thank you again. And of course, thank you to our videographer and editor, Sarah from Atlantic's Studios.
As the name suggests, all the Stronger Than My Excuses shows are created to help you, the viewer, to have the confidence to take action, not to make excuses. So every show will wrap up with some action tools. If you're watching this on YouTube or on social media, please ask them questions and we'll be happy to answer those questions as quickly as we can.
So everything seems to be moving so fast. We're constantly inundated with information, and it's difficult for a business owner to find balance between stability and agility. So why is it so difficult to find balance right now? Sam, what do you think?
I think obviously COVID is the big elephant in the room, but it's led to a lot of shifts where people are working from home or not at all, changing jobs, starting new business ventures. There's a lot of uncertainty in the professional realm, but also in the personal realm, keeping kids at home or juggling, various things in personal life. I think it's kind of obvious to me why the balance is a bit out of whack at the moment. I think people are really just trying to find their feet. There's been a lot of new growth coming out of this crazy world, but there's also still a lot of uncertainty. So I think that the crux of it is uncertainty.
And Jackie, what do you think? What in your role with the NBN and the bigger picture, you must see as a real challenge at the moment?
Yeah, it is. For the average business, though, technology should be really seen as a tool to help them solve problems and not necessarily create more complexity for their business. We should always be looking at ways to streamline or automate our processes within our businesses, or use programs to, say, replicate content across multiple social media platforms, as an example. right now, I mean, digital transformation will become less about changing human behavior to adapt to technology, and instead focus more on technology being used to connect to the market and to the customer in more compelling ways. So right now we are in a moment of uncertainty, but we have been now for the past year. People have really, I mean, we've progressed. McKinsey, I believe, did a study, and we progressed about 5 years in the digital space for businesses, where normally we did that in a matter of months. I know that the usage for businesses for data is off the charts right now. I think it was about a 300% increase last year, mainly attributed to Zoom calls like this. So we have changed. I think we'll continue to change, and that is the new normal.
So in my business in publishing newspapers, our mastheads in print and online, we see a lot of challenges in the small business community in particular, and families, and how they balance their work-life balance, as it used to be called. Marc, you're out in the community taking photos and close up with people all the time. Give us some tips of what you've seen of some of the best that's happened.
One of the things I'm finding that people are doing is that they are focusing on how they can still show up visually and online. And that's really what it comes down to nowadays, is that we have to use the technology tools as a means to balance out what is not available to us in person. That's really what I have a very different view of the world in the term balance in of itself, because I see balance as not being something that's a perfect equilibrium. Nothing ever is, you know, especially right now. And this is the fact that what's happening in COVID right now and these lockdowns proves that. You know, I don't even have to say much more than that, and to say, hey, look, if there's something that we all have to recognize and acknowledge, is that if we're not going to be in person and we're going to keep our businesses going, we have to find other ways. So what I'm finding a lot of people are doing is they're actually reaching out to digital agencies or organizations that are in the space to help them do that digital transformation and understand some of the tools that are available to them so they can still show up as best as they possibly can. The great challenge with that, of course, is adapting and learning some of these things. So that's really where I see more of the issue, is getting people to understand that it's going to take some effort and some work, but it's actually a lot easier than they think, as long as they put their head to it.
Yeah, it's a challenge, all right, and setting boundaries and having strategies that allow us to do that and allow us to adapt and change, and indeed be flexible, might be the code word for 2021. Mm-hmm. Balance is something you have to work out yourself. And Marc, again, you're meeting these people, and through imagery, how does that specifically change the way that we're doing business? How can it actually help us come back from balance after, for example, a stressful day homeschooling and Zoom meeting around the place?
I think probably the easiest way to answer that is quite simply think about the fact that, human beings have been, we are visual people. As much as we're kinesthetic and auditory and all those other things, yeah, we all learn and consume information in different ways. And the big one that's been knocked out is kinesthetic in person, the touch thing, that's gone. So really it's about, leveraging what's left of our ways of communicating, which is sound and vision. And so being able to communicate through, people are taking more photos than they ever have before. It's like, how many times have I actually seen people taking images of themselves doing something with a product that they just ordered? Like the product reviews you'll see people will do now are actually short videos, which is kind of cool, right? So that's a way of the adapting that's taking place.
Sam, any thoughts on the issue?
Well, I'd like to second Marc's point on challenging the notion of balance and what that's perceived as. I often look at the word balance as more of a question of integration. So when people say something like work-life balance, I actually challenge that and say it's more about work-life integration. In other words, how do we integrate work with life and life with work? And it is this ecosystem that, for whatever reason, society has push those apart to say, work is here in this bucket and life is here in this bucket, and they don't mix. And I think now what we're seeing is it's had to mix. Everyone has been thrown in the deep end, and they've gone, how do I set up, I think you use the word boundaries, routines, things like this to ensure that there isn't bleed between the things that you don't want to come across between the two. But inevitably, we're here in our homes, a lot of us, and we're having to face challenges that we haven't seen before. there has been the uncertainty at the start, and I think people are adapting, but it is slow. Even after almost a year and a half now, it takes time. So I think the audio visual way of communicating is something that feels a little uncomfortable, and I think people are beginning to find ways to make that more interactive and engaging, and better quality setups, conversations like this where it's much more conversational. I think all that stuff is really important, and just frequency of communicating is huge. For our team in particular, we want to make sure that we're having those face-to-face conversations, virtually speaking, as much as possible, just so we don't lose that feeling of being connected.
So sparking conversations, and I mean, one thing that comes to mind is certainty and adaptability, particularly in a sort of a family environment. So many of us have families in different shapes and sizes at different stages. How do we bring balance and certainty as well as adaptability to our business, and at the same time, maintain what we all need is a good family or home life? Jackie, can you give us a perspective of a family as a parent in the modern age?
Absolutely, because right now we're homeschooling this week. I've been working from home now, primarily from home for the past year. It's actually been, for our family, it's brought a balance. I used to do an hour and a half commute each way to work. And I used to leave the house at 6:30, not even seeing my own kids, driving to work, coming back, doing the whole routine and seeing them maybe for an hour. So now it's broken up into segments of work, but it means that I can actually be present and they can see me and I can see them. And it's quite nice. I guess there's the adaptability on a personal level. And then there's, of course, on the business side, even everybody knows here, I mean, you've adapted just this year with all the Zoom and Teams calls, is that now there's almost this norm that people have when they speak, and they know to put each other on mute.
Yep.
And they use more hand expressions now, more facial expressions on purpose. We've all adapted to these very strange social cues just in a matter of a few months. So it's been an interesting journey this year.
It certainly has. I mean, I'm particularly interested in how it affects families here on the Central Coast. I know we've got a lot of families that commuted a long way, and it touched me to say that you used to leave at 6:30 and not see the kids at the start of it. The guys, Marc and Sam, what are your reflections on that?
Sam, I think I'll let you go first because you're probably
Sure.
closer to a lot of younger families than I am.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got a soon-to-be 6-year-old out there stomping, and a little nervous she's going to charge in here at some point.
We'd love it.
yeah, she'll probably ask for something completely random, but absolutely, Jackie. And I've been very fortunate not to have needed to commute any long distance ever. And I've been very, I guess, opposed to wanting to do that because I know the sacrifice that is. And so I'm really excited for people, hearing that story where the commute instantly is shaved off. That's 3-4 hours that people have gained back up to 5 days a week, which is absolutely huge. And I think there's a lot of positive that's going to come out of that. So I'm really excited just about gaining that time and headspace back, for others. And I think that helps the community, that helps relationships as a whole. You'll notice when I talk, I'm very strongly considerate to the relationship between personal and business. Again, they're not separate. So I think healthy family lives are so fundamental to a healthy business, healthy community, and that whole cycle. So yeah, we're adapting to the work from home just this week, and there's some parents who can't do that, and they've got their kids with whatever arrangements possible. But I think there will be some healthy stuff that comes out of it.
It's I've got to say, it's great to hear from a young man that perspective. It also demonstrates a generational change, because 20 years ago when I was trying to do a similar thing, it would have been a hard thing culturally to do. Marc, you had any thoughts before we finish this particular topic?
It's fascinating because, it's one of those things where I think to some degree, having been born and raised in Canada, the technology was a little different from where I was. And you see, what I was quite surprised with when I first moved to Australia in 2008 was that technology wasn't being used as much as I was used to. I was doing Zoom training, or it wasn't called Zoom, it was a prior version of it, as far back as 2001 and 2002. So, because I had some of the people I was doing some training online, which was 150, 200 kilometers away, and it was easier for me to bring everybody together. So when I moved here, I realized that the culture was a little different. There was a lot more people wanting to get together, an awful lot more. That was what I felt and what I was seeing. And then, and exactly what Sam was talking about with regards to travel. When I first moved to the Central Coast, I was still working in Alexandria. So I was doing that crazy trip of 2.5 hours. I experienced it. And I have to say, I was really happy that stopped in the end, because now I've been able to focus an awful lot more on the things that matter to me. If I'm on the road, it's because I actually have a reason to be on the road now, as opposed to what it used to be, which was, basically a lot of dead time. I went through an awful lot of audiobooks during that period of time, so it's a fascinating thing to see how we're actually adapting. But what we're going to see, I think, over the next 2 to 3 years is more that whole thing of, all right, we need to have a space in our home that is dedicated for adapting for this technology space. We're going to see houses being built specifically with offices that are tech offices because of it.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thought. I mean, hello, tax department, a little write-off for 10% of your house.
That's right.
It's a very legitimate excuse, and it's maybe there's a silver lining to these challenges that we're going through at the moment, that we may very well see more of our families and our communities than we once did. Hey, we got to this point in the proceedings where we're starting to try and crystallize your thoughts. So I'm going to ask this challenging question that our director producer asks. Sam, I'll go to you first. One word that describes what we've been talking about today. One word that sums up the topic. What would your one word be?
I think I used it before, integration.
Integration. We've got integration. I'll jump to you, Jackie. What's your one word, your one magic word for this topic?
I will say, in a long answer of one word, I won't go to the usual ones that have been used for the year, because we've heard the agility and flexibility and shifting and all of that, pivot. Yeah. I don't want to hear that word again. I'm not going to use that when we're talking about businesses in a digital space and individuals within business in a digital space. I'm going to use the word presence.
Presence. Great. Okay, we're getting somewhere. And Marc, what would yours be?
I struggle with this one because I'm like you, Jackie. I can't come up with a single word that just encapsulates. And I really like yours, Sam, because it does actually run very well with that whole concept of being able to find a different way of looking at the word balance. Because to me, I've never felt like the world, like I'm one of these people that doesn't want to retire one day. I enjoy what I do and I want to do it forever. So to me, if I can think of a word that'll really be, I'll use a hyphenated word: future thinking.
Oh, that's almost cheating. But there we go. Hyphenated word. Well, mine is going to be surfing, because all of these, I'd prefer to be surfing right now, even though it's cold. But the other thing is, it struck me that surfing and waves and keeping a balance means sometimes falling off and just getting back on and surfing the waves. So look, thanks all of you for your insights and contributions. I mean, it's great information and wonderful that we can do it here together. And thanks very much to the digital marketing web company, Sam, at Advantage Agency, for offering their space and their efforts to make this happen. And thanks for our videographer and editor, Atlantic Studios, Sarah. Thank you very much for coming on and sewing all of this big bearskin together.
And of course, we'd like to thank all of the sponsors for the show today, and we really appreciate your support. It's really important to us, really. It does make a big difference. And we'd also like to ensure that you remember to watch the show on YouTube and check it out on social media also. I'm sure you'll be able to find the show on social media feeds. If you've got questions, by all means, feel free to reach out and ask those questions. We'll see what we can do to help out.
And yeah, well, thanks again for watching. And for Stronger Than My Excuses is an action plan. I love what Julie's doing with Stronger Than My Excuses. It's an action-based thing. And that's what we all need in these challenging times. Thanks to my co-host, Marc Charette from WorkPics 360.
Thanks, Dave, and it's always good to see you. Unfortunately, we can't get to see each other in person right now, but I'm sure that'll happen again sometime soon. And thank you very much to Jackie Svedas from the NBN, and also Sam from Advantage Agency for joining us today. And Sam, a special thanks for being so accommodating such a challenging time when we literally are just trying to keep things going. Much appreciated. And of course, we also want to make sure we thank Dave Abrams from Central Coast Newspapers for having been our host today. It's good to see you again, Dave, in the virtual world. Hopefully it'll be again in real person soon.
Wonderful, Marc, and thank you, and thanks everybody. See you next time.